the topic of my discussion today, or my talk today, is identity is the key to zero trust. And so hopefully all of you know about zero trust and what it is. The goal is to initially talk through the basics of zero trust, take it from my interpretation, and when I say my interpretation, I work for Cisco, and so we'll take it from Cisco's interpretation, and then I have a little treat for you. We're going to go through how Cisco implemented zero trust themselves, because what's a better way than to learn from someone else's mistakes? And we're just a little bit of a company, so you'll get to know. So I usually do an about me slide, but I didn't do one today, just to kind of let you know I'm local here. I went to the Blue College that's just down the road. Thanks. But I work with the Red College and the Purple College and the Green College and the Blue College and the other Red College and the other colleges down there. So I have a lot of, as well as some over in Colorado. So I have a lot of friends. I grew up in Wyoming, and I figured out I wanted to do IT when my dad gave me an alarm clock that broke, and I started to take it apart. And then I went into electronics engineering technology, where I could learn how to build mini badges. So if you've been down to the Cisco booth or have seen me a long time ago from all the times we've done here, we like to have fun little mini badges, simple but fun. Barbie's my new favorite. But while I was going to school, I had a friend give me some advice. He said, instead of going into the electronics engineering technology, you should check out this company or this new thing called IT. He's like, it's totally worth it. And he was down the path. He was doing a lot of this stuff anyway. And he's like, you should try it out, and then you can figure out how to open up your world. And so I did. And the happy thing for me is my son, who just graduated last year, actually just started taking Cisco Network Academy through they're at Blue University, WGU, just recently, and so he signed up, and so he's super excited. And for all the night owls out there, I honor you and I respect you, and I think it's a great program, and it's good to have education. So let's talk about zero trust design. It means different things to different people. It used to be that buzzword that you hated hearing, and your leadership or sales guys would come in and like, do you know anything about zero trust? What's your zero trust strategy? And you'd be all nervous, and so you'd give answers the way you thought it was, and these are answers that were coming across that I found across some of the research I did. But really, the nice thing is it's finally maturing into a standard, or at least a structure. So we have, depending on whether you're looking at NIST or whether you're looking at some of these other security frameworks, they almost all agree on the fact that these 5 pillars are part of what we're going to talk about. And for me, I work for Cisco, and so you obviously choose that middle one, networking and environment. You look at that and you can think, okay, that's a lot of the stuff we have to care about. But I'm an application guy. I love focusing on the end user, because in my opinion, 0 days, and some of the research we've seen with the Verizon breach report and the other breach reports that have been out there, the 0 days are not necessarily the things that you have to worry about. In all reality, the problems are your users. That's where your issue exists. And as wonderful as it is, I just read this morning that 28% of phishing attacks are now coming through QR codes. And so while I love having QR codes and they're super simple and super nice, I actually wanted to share the white paper for what we're doing for this Cisco on Cisco is what we like to call it. And I was going to show you a QR code at the end, but you don't trust me, and if you do, you shouldn't. We're at a security conference. I mean, I put stuff up on here, and my favorite QR code that my wife showed me the other day is somebody totally did a QR code to get rickrolled. So just beware. But we're going to talk on the first two, identity and devices. As far as network and environment and application workload and data, hopefully you have a good structure and a good implementation around that, because that's sometimes a little bit easier to control. I say sometimes because if you're a security engineer and you ask an application owner or a business service owner, you ask them what ports they need opened, they're going to look at you with deer in the headlights. So good luck. That's a different topic all general in itself. So again, we've got more slides on the bottom, but I'm not going to talk through those, just the first two. So when you look at how you're going to define your zero trust strategy, these are some recommendations that we have for you, and I've done this as well as a couple of my security-focused peers. We do zero trust workshops. Is also one that are called safe workshops. But really, the focus is we try to help people understand the principles of what zero trust is, so that you can minimize the scope creep and keep people in the places that they need to. And then you figure out a way to build a strategy of how you're going to get there. And then it goes through platform and capabilities, what you get the idea of what you want to do, and then you actually figure out what you want to do. And it's not till you get to the bottom that you're actually mapping technologies and defining features with that. And so this is the approach that Cisco took ourselves, and this is the one we recommend as well. But to make sure we level set, I want to focus on what the basics of zero trust are. Zero trust, you never assume trust, obviously, because it's zero trust. You always verify, and you enforce the least privilege. And so when you look at that in your life, as you're trying to build that in your security mindset, you've got to figure out ways that you can implement around these things. And I'm sorry I have to read the slides, but I think they're pretty important. Marketing likes animation. I don't, but I happen to find a really good marketing slide that talks about this, so I apologize for animation. The first thing is establish trust. That's what we're going to look at. Established trust focuses on both the users and your devices and whatever service identity that you might be bringing into that. We have to make sure what's going on with that trust, that device. We need to make sure it's healthy. We need to make sure that you can focus and make a change, and again, continually verify the trust. If something happens in the middle of your authenticated trust, you need to be able to do something different, because if they change, then we need to switch. It's no longer get through the many layers of security and you're finally in. It's continually testing over and over and over. And one of the thoughts that I have, if again, this is a security conference, and so hopefully you guys have heard the buzzwords. RSA really is drawing a lot of focus on what's called XDR, and really understanding how to, and I've heard the X be extended or extensible, but being able to respond to what happens when you have a change of trust, when someone's different. If you look at my normal behavior, if I go on vacation and I'm now trying to VPN in from my phone in Brussels, then there should be actually a little bit of a, hey, wait a second. Do we know who this person is? Do we know why they're trying to access these pieces of software or whatever the service is? And then be able to say, okay, what are we going to do to remediate? And it might just be an additional authentication, an additional verification, or it might be something worse. So going and looking through this, and I kind of skipped a little bit, but I hope most of you, this is supposed to be an intermediate class, and so if you need to focus on these things, raise your hand, because I can see most of your hands, and then we can kind of talk through it. Otherwise, we're going to go on to the fun stuff because you guys should already know most of this. So this is why we're here. Cisco did zero trust at scale, and we'll talk about the numbers, but I did want to reference the fact that I did put a unicorn in my entry of what we're going to learn today, and so I had to make sure and follow through, and there's your unicorn. And that might be Dash, I'm not sure, for those that like Zootopia. That it could be whatever, Dash or Speed or whatever his name is, but a sloth riding a unicorn, how can you beat that? That's, by the way, my daughter helped me out with that one. She's awesome. So this is what Cisco did. So we decided to take an opportunity. Now this was in 2020, so you all know the environment, but we decided to take this opportunity to implement zero trust. To give you an understanding of how many people, we have about 70,000 employees and about 30,000 contracted employees. That fluctuates back and forth. So we've got about 100,000 users that we onboarded with this system. Over 170,000 devices. Now, we'll talk about this in some of the approach of what we're trying to do, but I gave you the answer up front. These are the results. We'll come through and talk through some of these results as well. And like I said, the published white paper, if you Google Zero Trust at Scale Cisco, you'll be able to find the white paper that we published on this. But really the focus was we needed to be able to get something better and hopefully not do it while breaking everyone while we're at home. And we may have had a bit of an aggressive timeline with 5 months, but you know, what the heck, let's do it. So what does it look like to have zero trust at Cisco? So today, when I log into any of my applications, anytime anyone logs into any application that is what we call borderless. A borderless application is something that's not VPN'd, that you don't need VPN. We verify the user, we verify the device health, we verify that the device is a trusted device, not just that it has health, but it is a trusted device. And then we make sure that the app has the ability to be accessible without VPN. And there's some key features of it, but I'll tell you what, we were trying to do this before, and it wasn't nice. It was quite painful. And when I was thinking to myself, okay, if I'm in your shoes and I had to do this myself, and I started to look at what I would want to do or think about doing with zero trust, I would think, you know, it would probably be about as much fun as walking through my house with Legos all over the floor without shoes on. And it's just happened that last year about a year or so ago, I went to the Lego house in Denmark. It was a series of really fortunate and weird events that made it so that I could be here. And they have really cool Lego structures. And my favorite one that I found is a dinosaur. And if you look down underneath the right foot of the dinosaur is a little grumpy because he's stepping on a Lego. So my question is, will it be worth the pain? And I'll tell you, this is what the pain was right at the time that we were going through this. We were authenticating you a lot for every single application. And so, yes, we had SSO in some cases, and in others we didn't. But I had to I honestly would authenticate probably, I would say, once every 10 or 15 minutes I'm authenticating. And sometimes I'd see SSO and I'd see the authentication and it would go through right. And sometimes I'm putting in a password. And so I was super grateful for a password, a password managers that would put that in there so I didn't have to keep typing in my password. And my password's about 24 characters long, and so it took a few seconds to type it in over and over. So we looked at it, and we decided, and I say we, the Cisco security IT team, we decided what are the 3 pillars that we needed to do that would make it worth the pain that everyone's going through. And so the first thing, and by the way, this is the other little picture if you looked really close, This is why why the dinosaur is such a happy dinosaur, because he's got a little monster dinosaur in the bottom that's so cute. But again, my daughter liked that picture more than she liked the other one. The first focus is on improved authentication experience. If we're going to make you authenticate every single time, over and over and over, for every single app, then we need to make it so you don't know you're authenticating every single time, over and over and over, for every single app. A couple of years ago, I came up and I presented about passwordless, and I dreamed about passwordless, and I hoped that passwordless would come, and so that was my hope that this would come out of. An improved authentication experience. The next thing is the fact that we, like all of you, had our VPN usage increase fourfold, and it was taxing, to say the least. So our goal was to find as many applications that we could and make them borderless applications. And I can tell you, I've worked in the industry for 20 years now, and one of my favorite borderless applications that first came out that I thought was impossible that it could be borderless was this little thing called a BlackBerry. And I loved it. And I loved it as an Exchange administrator, that people didn't have to VPN in to get their email on their phone, and we could do it securely. And so just taking that same idea and making it through. Now, again, I'm going to use Cisco's experiences, so you can use other types of things as we talk through it. But again, I'll just talk through how we did it. And then the last part is, if we're doing zero trust, we need to have increased security. If we don't increase our security, then what's the point? And so that was the focus. We wanted to be able to not only identify who the user is, but again, go back to the principles of identity and device. So let's talk about it. We had to have a plan. So one of the things that you get as you go through the Lego house is 6 red blocks. There are almost 1 billion, so 917 million combinations that you can do with these 6 red blocks. And is that how you feel about zero touch and how you could implement zero touch in your network? Well, maybe not 1 billion different ways, but what my whole goal with that, with showing you this, is just understand that this worked for us. These are ways we did it, and these are ways we found success. And so hopefully that will give you a way to find success in your own implementation and work. So number 1 key, this is how we did it. We needed executive sponsorship. And any of you who've worked on a project and not had an executive sponsor it, and I don't mean a director, I don't mean a VP, I mean a C-level. We had 2 executives. We had the CIO for Cisco and the Chief Information Security and Trust Officer. I know they added a T in there just to make them cooler, because I think that's how you get pay raises, is you get different letters in your exec. So we started with those 2 people, and they were the ones that helped us. And this is where it's awesome. If you can get an executive level buy-off, they provide the air cover, they provide the work, so that we could say to the 70,000 or 100,000 employees that we're going to affect by this, you have to do it. And it's not going to suck the whole time. We're going to make it good. And so that worked out really well. And then the other part that goes with it is we made sure to involve them in the beginning. And I said stakeholders are invited in the beginning. So when you get an invitation from a C-level person in your company that tells you to come to a zero trust workshop, do you show up? You're darn right you do. Even if your title is janitor, you show up. And so that's how we worked on this. And we started at the top. We made sure we did the planning together. And then we didn't say, this is our product, we're done. What we did was we failed a lot, and we failed fast, and we failed big, and we broke things. And at the end, we came out with what I feel as a user, something really, really good. and a really simple authentication. Now, it's not perfect, but in my opinion, it's much better than it's ever been, and it achieves what we're trying to do. So who is we? This is the next key that we used, and this is a recommendation that I have for you, is we found a core team to help build the solution. And this core team had decision-making power. Granted through the executives, you have decision-making power. So if the infrastructure team decides that they need to go buy stuff, they have the power to do that. If the endpoint team says we need to install something on your endpoint, and we need to make a change, we need to do these things, we need to buy certificates, we need to, adjust how we're doing things, remove this, add this, we did it. And you think to yourself, well, you're Cisco, you're so big, you could do it. No, we're Cisco, we're so big. We have a lot of fighting. And I can tell you that this right here solved a lot of our fighting. And so now when you're, and as we talk about acquisitions and trying to bring new people in and spin them out and spin them in, it's not the easiest thing to be able to get them all under one umbrella. And this is something that we helped. The next was we had an identity team. So if your identity team isn't involved in your zero trust, then you need to go back to the foundation of what zero trust is and make sure to get the identity team in, because they're super important. And then this part was really important for me personally, because I, as an end user, wanted to know what was happening. And so we had a communications team. And the communications team had the ability, and I don't know if you have the ability, to send out mass emails to your entire company. But before I worked at Cisco, I worked at a company, and there were 20 of us that had that ability. And the only reason why I had that ability was because I was the exchange administrator, but nobody else, very few of the IT team. So having a communication strategy and having a team that can work in that. And then an information security team, because obviously as we're making decisions, as we're following it, we need to have that information security team to help guide us through those principles and focus on the important pieces. Now, we met weekly, and so we had to have a key decision holder in that meeting every week to report on what was happening. And now I'm going to say we met weekly. We met weekly as a team to try to get to move things forward, to get key blockers out of the way. And so as we got together, we defined what our technical goals are. And these are our technical goals. Let me take a drink while you take a look. So let's start at the left. The left, we had multi-factor authentication. That was a pretty big success. It was already a check the box. Cybersecurity, you got to have it, as well as a lot of other things that you've got to have it. We also had SSO implemented, and we had the basics of some trusted device things. We use tools. We've got about half of our devices are Windows devices, about that many more is Mac, and then we've got Linux, and we've got iOS, and we've got a bunch of Androids. And if you think about what kind of Androids we have them all across the country. So there's all sorts of different kind of Androids. So we had to work with that device trust to figure out ways that we could install certificates, install applications, make sure that your username was the same username on your computer that you're going to connect into, or some sort of authentication like that, so your passwords will be easier to change. We also then had to go in and check the defined policies that go around the applications to make sure we could integrate with those policies. Again, that's going back to the identity team. But not only that, we had to get with the application owners to say, yes, your app can be enabled for SSO, and yes, your app can, have the ability to be de-authed if we make a change. So for those that know SSO really well, they have to have a log-off screen. They have to be able to have that, so when we make a change, it kicks them out if we tell them to do so. We built a reverse proxy. We have a reverse proxy tool, dumbing it down. It's called a Duo Network Gateway. We had to be able to find a way to enable those apps and see if they work and see if they will be able to do that. So that's the pie in the sky, and then find a way to continually check on that and understand and detect if there's any risks. So we had to look at the two different kinds of apps we have. The first one are SaaS apps. So these should be the easiest ones, right? Because if you have a SaaS app and it's not SSO, you should probably throw it in the garbage, and you should go buy a SaaS app that is SSO. I said that because I feel that way very strongly. It doesn't take a lot. SAML 2.0 has been around for a while. OAuth's been around for a while. The next thing that makes it super important is SCIM. If you don't know what SCIM is the ability, so if you're a system administrator, to not have to create an account in said application if you give them the access in something like an Active Directory or some other thing. In our case, Active Directory. So if you're using SCIM, it works really, really well, and away it goes. So we said this is our guiding principles for SaaS apps. We'd make sure that, number one, if we have the trust certificate so it can authenticate correctly, and then we'll go through and authenticate through the app, prompt the MFA because that should work, and then make sure that the app is trusted, the endpoint is trusted before giving access to the app. So pretty simple. Next thing, on-prem apps. We have to make sure that this one's a little bit more difficult because now we have to expose ports and we have to understand what they're trying to get to and make sure that it can go through our Duo Network gateway. But otherwise, it's the same thing. They actually connect to the gateway, then they get authenticated, again, the same exact way, and then after they've been authenticated and the trust has been established, we go through. That's the pie in the sky. So now you want to see how it happened? Let me show you. This is a video of our first attempt of it happening. Actually, it's my son. He's demoing for me. So a lot of it was the same thing. We took the first month. Again, we said we had a 5-month window. We took the first month to try to take those principles that we used and implement them. And I call it POC speed dating. We started and stopped and started and stopped because we wanted the experience to be the same. And remember, we had 170,000 different devices. And of those, operating systems are all over the place. So we had to figure out how to make sure that people were on the same versions, the updated versions of the apps. We had to make sure that when we did something on a Mac, that it would be close enough or very similar to the same experience that we do on Linux and on Windows, as well as the myriad of other Android devices. And we had to find if there were Android devices that we couldn't establish trust on, we had to be able to we had to find a way to tell people about this. And that's just the endpoints. Then we had to go through the apps and figure out which apps we could do. And we started with a small subset and then just built through the apps. Thankfully, this is exactly how we felt. We just ran back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It was a long month, but it was very, very good to learn and fail fast, as we like to say. So we got through the hard part. We made sure the SSO was enabled. We made sure all those things were turned on, like we said. Then we said, all right, what's the next thing we need to do? We need to deploy our infrastructure. So now we knew what we had. We had to find clear resources that were required. We had to find apps that were going to be added into it. So we said, all right, we need to have this many servers and this much blah, 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 blah. And I just put it under deploying infrastructure. And then we made the changes to be able to do that. We made these changes in the apps. And again, failing fast as we'd start to deploy out that infrastructure. If we had a problem, we'd be able to fix it. Now, months 3 and 4. Our first pilot was our IT team. So, all those 5 core teams, we made sure that they were working. And then we went out to our first real pilot, which was about 2,000 users. And our first 2,000 users were our key stakeholders that we are super friends with and knew about the project and subscribed to the project and wanted to be those people. They were very kind. They gave lots of great feedback, and they experienced what they thought was going to be a better situation. And you know what those 2,000 people found? That it was pretty crappy. It was horrible. And then it got better, and then it got better, and then it got better. And then we built another user set and tried another user set. And across all the organizations within Cisco, we made sure that our major test set of people, which was 35,000 people by month 4, when we ran that pilot through, 35,000 people now were implemented and using not the final, but what will be the final version. There are early access field trials. And these people signed up and wanted to, and then, or else they were voluntold because they'd signed up and done some things with that they were already beta, like, hey, you're a beta Mac user, you're a beta this, you're a beta that. And we were able to find those people and get them in. And we found success. And so when it came to month 5, we didn't want to ruin anyone's Christmas. And so what we decided was, we're going to full send and just do it. And we did. And that's amazing. In the month 5, we went from 35,000 to a full implementation and had extreme success. And what does extreme success look to you? Extreme success is whether or not they got to have Christmas with their family. Now, at Cisco, we shut down from Christmas Eve through New Year's. And so we had to make sure it was done. December had to be done essentially by like the 16th to the 18th. Because if it's going to have crap happen, we had to be able to prepare to be done by the 23rd and make sure we were safe. We implemented across the board, and I highlighted it on a first slide, but the best part about that was the fact that, sorry, it went through it. I went to lessons learned, sorry. I'll skip and then I'll come back. The best part about it is we had less than 1% of our users contacted support. And so we felt like we were superstars. Again, this is the son that jumped off the diving board. He got lots of trophies because he's amazing. And we felt that way too because we were successful. We deployed over 120 apps. And for that, for us, that's huge because these are the major apps that people use every single day, and reduced our VPN usage by, I think, 400,000 per month. So a lot. That we're able to put dollar signs on the cost savings we got from that. Now let's go back. What did we learn? Let me take a drink. Things that we learned that I would recommend, again, back to you, was focusing on that team approach. We were able to find that our core 5 team groups helped us. By the way, I do want to highlight this picture. I was going to do a dumpster fire, but has anyone seen what happens if you've got a garbage truck around the 4th of July, or the 5th and 6th, and their garbage starts on fire? And they've got a garbage truck full of fire, what do? They go find a church parking lot and they just dump it out in a church parking lot like this, and then they sit and hose it down. It's pretty awesome. So that's my dumpster fire, but my favorite new dumpster fire. But anyway, so the dumpster fire, the things that we learned and the struggles that we had were making sure that our team, and we learned this from some of our other implementations, our team approach was key because we needed to give them the ability to make decisions. So if you're looking at that in yourself and you're saying, hey, I need to build a team, don't handcuff them. Allow them to make decisions. Allow them to have the next part of an executive sponsorship that helps them learn that it's okay to fail. It's just fine to fail. Just learn from your mistakes and make it faster and make it better the next time. And then for us, the pilot, it says pilot for proof. We had to get buy-in. We had to get buy-in from our stakeholders. And so when we built a pilot, our pilot actually worked on apps that we had built that were dummy apps. Everybody's seen the fun WordPress things, and we built our own some of our internal apps. We got with team members that are developing apps or doing things, and we connected our products together to make it work so that people could see the vision. And once we did that pilot for proof that people could see that vision, then we helped them create a demand. So I talked again early at the beginning, but I also talked a couple of years ago here about passwordless. That right there was one of the key things that we wanted to help drive. And so yes, passwordless is real. I love it because when I log into a lot of my apps on my trusted device, which is authenticated and password protected, it uses my biometrics to log into my apps. And do I know that it's logging in and using my biometrics? Absolutely. And is it so great? Absolutely. One of the other things that I love, the last time I changed my password was 2.5 years ago. And you're like, wait, you can't do that. Yes, we can. Yes, we can do that. Yes, it's amazing. And that's one of the reasons why I signed up 2.5 years ago. I never forget my password. It's so awesome. I have a nice long password. My wife doesn't like it because it's so long, but it doesn't matter because it's not her choice. And she forgets it all the time, but it's the same way with her password. I know her core understanding of what her password is, but she uses all sorts of crap in the middle of it, which is good, right? That's the point of a good password. But again, we needed to create demand for that so that people would want to sign up. The number one app that never is used that we enabled was VPN. Passwordless VPN. And nobody uses it. Well, not nobody, but a majority of the users don't use it anymore. And even something as simple as our intranet site. Our intranet site is borderless. And so a lot of the tools that people are getting to and are needing to go through are now there. The last thing that I think is super important that we learned was the ability or the importance to be fully transparent in your decisions and the status of what you're doing. So again, I'm a user of this team. I was in the pilot group, and so I got the ability to sign up. I found the pilot group, I signed up. There was an email that was sent to me or a notification that was sent to me, and I received it, and I signed up and I said, yes. I was on a SharePoint site. They sent me weekly updates. I got notifications. I had a bot that would sit and talk to me and ask me for feedback. I was able to give that feedback. It was fantastic because there was continuous communications. And users, as they were rolled out, understood what was happening. So again, super awesome. Now let's talk about security. So again, I highlighted about XDR. One of the things that I love about this is we have now, from this whole Zero Trust project, data on those user devices. A month, every single month, almost 6 million health checks are done on your devices. So you know what the number one most annoying thing I get from this is every time Chrome wants an update, because I get a few days before I have to update Chrome. The other thing that I love is the fact that devices are updated all the time. Patch Tuesday, for you guys that, I don't know if any of you use Microsoft devices. Patch Tuesday, it's mandatory now. You can't delay it, because if you're trying to delay it, what do? If you've pushed the button and figured out ways to shut it off and make it not happen, what do? We shut off your apps. We don't care. If you don't want to update, we don't care. You just don't join. Your boss might care, but the other thing that's amazing about it is that just the fact that you can now do something about the health check. We had that continuous loop, and to be able to say, this is XDR at its finest, we have changed some sort of feature in our authentication or our trust, and now we need to go do something else, whether that's an endpoint, whether that's a network change, whether that's an application change or a firewall change. That's the beauty of XDR, and that's the power of having a platform that can talk through every single one of those. So last, I'm going to give you a little bonus, extra. So what is Cisco doing next? Because you can't just do stuff today and then rest on your laurels. So we talked about 120-ish, 120 plus applications. We had more, I just didn't want to count any more of them. 120 applications that we were able to make borderless. What about all the other applications that we can't make borderless? What about those that we can't, we have to do VPN? And what about the confusion of when I'm in the office versus out of the office? And so if you did come to Cisco Live, our head of security talked about this story. He said, when you go get a drink of water, you go to the fridge and you turn on the pipe, he's like, you shouldn't have to wonder whether that's a copper pipe, whether that's a clay pipe, whether that's a galvanized steel pipe, whether that's whatever. You should just get water. And he's like, an application should be the same way. So this is the next thing that we're working towards and we're doing. Is enabling the fact that whether you're going to use zero trust network access with those borderless apps, whether you're going to force a VPN, whether you're doing a SaaS application or whether you're on a wired, and I hope that worked, yeah, whether you've got a direct connection, direct app, it's going to make sure that we extend that trust and that security, not just to our zero touch apps, but all of these things. And so if you're familiar with some of the buzzwords that are out there, you can kind of guess what some of those buzzwords are off of the story. But again, when we look at the users, we just want them to authenticate. And then the next step in the journey is now that they've authenticated, now they can get their apps and whatever else the case may be. So with that, I really appreciate your time. I did have okay, we'll let it do its thing. Ready? It's building. Whether it's this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. Yay! We handle the connect. No drama, no fuss, whatever. So with that, again, it's a cool slide. It was marketing. I like it to extent. With that, I wanted to leave some time for questions. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any questions? And if I can... Okay. Oh, yes. Yeah, so the question was, how do we get our executive sponsorship? Part of the drive was just a change in the stance of how we were going to do security, and part of the drive was the fact that it was on the list of things to do, but we could never get it to move. So we had to figure out how can we get this to move, and to be straight with you, the other part was the fact that it was a pandemic, and we were looking at how are we going to be able to afford to continue to blow up our VPN. And we're like, we've got to figure out a way to blow up our VPN or stop blowing up our VPN. And once we gave them the ideas, once the team got together and said, this is our direction, but we can't do this alone. And they said, well, what do you need? And we're like, well, you're not doing anything but sitting at home and getting on, WebEx calls. Why don't you help us work through this? And they're like, okay. And I know I simplified it, but those are the things. We found some pain, and we found some monetary incentives to help move it forward. And then the executives just got behind it. Some of the ones that I found from others, cyber insurance has been one of the main things that is that monetary incentive to get that executive sponsorship. Whether you can or can't get it, or whether your cyber premiums are going up. As we've learned with some cyber insurance companies, it's been very successful in getting that executive sponsorship. Thanks. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Authentication for biometrics. Built-in authentication. So when I authenticate on my iPhone, I can authenticate with my face. When I authenticate with my device, whether it's Windows Hello or my Mac Touch, those are the ones that we authenticate. Those are the ones, we have an approved list. Today, Chrome is the only one that we allow biometrics because that's the one that's with their passkey. But the other ones, hopefully they'll get there. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for your time.